My best friend asked me to help with her engagement party. When I arrived, I was horrified by her betrayal. When my best friend Sophie roped me into planning an engagement party, I was happy to help, until the event turned into a nightmarish betrayal. Confronted by my cheating ex in a public proposal orchestrated by Sophie, I was forced to question loyalty, love, and my own worth. Friendships are complicated things. They don't always follow a straight path, and they rarely look like the ones in movies or books. Sophie and I weren't the storybook kind of best friends, the ones who did everything together, finished each other's sentences, or wore matching bracelets in middle school. No, our friendship was built on something much shakier. We met in high school, and from day one, we were rivals. We competed in everything: top grades, track races, debates, and even subtle competitions for attention at parties. We didn't hate each other, but we were always measuring ourselves against one another. It made us better, sharper, more determined. But somewhere between all the unspoken challenges, late-night study sessions, and shared victories, we started to find common ground. By the time we reached college, that rivalry had faded into something real. Sophie became the one person I could always talk to, the one I could trust to be there no matter what. She still loved drama and a little chaos, but she had my back, or so I thought. A few weeks ago, Sophie called me. Her voice was bright, cheerful, practically buzzing through the phone. I still remember how she said it, like she was letting me in on the world's best secret. "Qley, Ryan and I are throwing a little engagement party," she said, letting the words hang in the air for a second before adding, "It's a surprise announcement. No one else knows yet, not even Ryan. Well, not about the party, I mean. So I need your help." I smiled as I listened. Sophie had been with Ryan for a while, and from everything I knew, he was a great guy. Sweet, thoughtful, kind. He adored Sophie, and it showed. They just worked. The news made me genuinely happy for her. "Of course, Sophie," I told her. "Congratulations, bestie." She laughed, clearly excited, and continued, "But it's not a big thing. I want a cozy and intimate vibe, you know? Just our closest people. I'll send out the invitations and whatnot when you're ready with them. You're so good at planning these events. Can you handle it?" There was no hesitation in me. I actually loved planning events, and hearing her trust me with something so special made me feel appreciated, important. "Absolutely," I said. "Just tell me what you need and if there's anything specific you want." Over the next few weeks, I dove headfirst into planning. I made Pinterest boards and mood boards, lists and checklists. I messaged her about details, what kind of flowers she liked, her favorite cake flavors, the guest list, but Sophie was surprisingly vague. She'd dodge specifics, saying she didn't want to overthink it. "I don't want to jinx it," she told me once when I asked her about finalizing the playlist. "Jinx what?" I asked, a little confused. "Everything's already planned. I just need to get the cake order finalized and it'll all be sorted. Nothing can be jinxed, Soph. It's going to be perfect." "You can't be too careful," she said with a small laugh. She always said it with a kind of distant smile, like she was hiding something behind her words, but I brushed it off. Sophie had always been a little dramatic, a little secretive when it came to emotions. I figured it was just nerves. Planning a party for your own engagement, even a surprise one, would make anyone a little jittery. By the time Friday rolled around, I had poured everything into making her vision a reality. I spent hours stringing up pink and gold balloons, hanging fairy lights from tree branches, and arranging soft floral centerpieces in delicate glass jars. Sophie's backyard, normally quiet and plain, was transformed into something that looked straight out of a romantic movie. When Sophie came out to see it, her reaction was everything I hoped for. "It's exactly how I imagined it," she said, spinning slowly in the middle of the yard, her eyes wide and sparkling. "Thank you, Oak. You've made it perfect, just perfect." She hugged me tightly, and I felt proud, even a little emotional. Seeing her that happy, it reminded me why I'd always called her my best friend. On Saturday, I packed up the last box of heart-shaped balloons into the backseat of my car and took one last glance at my list before heading over to her place. Everything was ready. The cake was on its way, the appetizers prepped, and the guests scheduled to arrive just after sunset. Ryan was expected home around the same time, coming back from a short business trip he'd taken on Thursday. I couldn't wait to see the moment unfold. I imagined his face when he walked in, how surprised he'd be, how happy. I pictured the way he'd pull Sophie into a hug, maybe even drop to one knee if he hadn't already proposed privately. I imagined Sophie's glowing expression, the way her eyes would shine surrounded by all her favorite people. The laughter, the hugs, the celebration, it was going to be perfect. At least that's what I believed. But that excitement turned to ice the moment I stepped inside. The first thing I noticed was how different the space looked with everyone there. The soft lighting I had strung up now reflected off people's faces. Guests stood around in small groups, some sipping champagne, others chatting quietly. The pink and gold balloons I had spent hours arranging floated cheerfully in corners and above the drink station. Everything looked perfect, but something felt wrong, like the room had shifted slightly sideways. Then I saw him, Jason. He stood in the center of the room, right underneath the string lights, as if he belonged there, like he had every right to be in the middle of it all. My ex-boyfriend, the person who had broken my heart in the most thoughtless way. He was wearing a dark suit, freshly pressed, and held a small velvet ring box in one hand. His grin stretched wide across his face. That grin used to charm me, used to feel like safety, but now it made my stomach twist. My skin prickled with a cold rush of disbelief. Surprise! Sophie's voice rang out like a bell as she rushed up to me, her face lit up with excitement. She threw her arms around me, like this was the happiest moment of our friendship. Jason has been planning this for weeks, and we thought who better to help with the decorations than you? Isn't it romantic? The words didn't register at first. They floated around in my head, unable to land. Jason, proposal, decorations, me. Slowly, like a puzzle clicking into place, the pieces came together. This wasn't Sophie's engagement party. This wasn't about Ryan. There was no surprise announcement for him. This party was for me. This was Jason's proposal. I had unknowingly planned and decorated my own proposal party for the man who had shattered me. What is this? I asked, barely able to get the words out. My voice trembled and my knees felt weak. I couldn't make sense of it. The entire room blurred around the edges as I locked eyes with Jason. He stepped forward, still smiling, his confidence pouring off him like it always had. That same self-assurance that once felt like leadership now looked like arrogance. I know I messed up, he began, his voice soft but calculated, like he was performing. But I've changed, Qley. You're the only one for me. I want to spend the rest of my life proving it. I stood there, frozen. This was the same Jason who had cheated on me with someone from his office. The same man who made me feel like I wasn't enough, who disappeared from my life without a word, only to break up with me in a short, heartless text. And now he thought that this public display, this flashy, humiliating stunt was enough to erase everything. I turned to Sophie, desperate for some kind of sense, some kind of explanation. My best friend, someone who knew exactly what Jason had done to me, was standing there like she'd just delivered the greatest gift of my life. You knew, I said, my voice cracking. You knew what he did to me. Sophie didn't flinch. She just smiled, as if I were being silly. Everyone makes mistakes, she said lightly, shrugging her shoulders. Besides, he's serious now. He's ready to commit, Oak. Isn't that what you've always wanted? Isn't that what matters? It was like she didn't hear me. Like, none of it mattered. Not the betrayal, not the heartbreak. All that seemed to matter was the show. I could barely breathe. It felt like the walls of the room were getting smaller, the air thinner. Her words echoed in my head. You'll thank me one day. You thought this was okay? I managed to ask. My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. It's a grand gesture, Qley, she said, still smiling, as if that made it all right. I think you'll thank me one day. I opened my mouth to speak again, to scream maybe or cry, but then I saw them, my parents. They stood quietly off to the side, near the back corner of the room. I hadn't noticed them when I first walked in. My mom stepped forward first. Her eyes were soft, her voice gentle. Jason explained everything, Oak, she said carefully. He made a mistake, sure, but he's trying to make it right. Don't be so stubborn, sweetheart. You're not getting any younger, and how often does a man who wants to propose come along? My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own mother. My father stayed quiet, looking away as if he didn't want to be part of it, but his silence felt just as loud. The shame hit me harder than anything else. Not just the shock, not just the betrayal, but the way all these people, the people I trusted, thought this was something I should be grateful for. They thought this was love. I turned on my heel. I had to get out. My eyes stung, and I didn't want to give anyone here the satisfaction of seeing me cry. I didn't even care where I was going. I just needed to move, fast. And that's when Noah walked in. He held the cake box in his arms, the one I had asked him to pick up on his way. I didn't trust myself to carry it in heels, and he had offered to help without hesitation. I had forgotten about him in all the chaos. Seeing Noah standing there felt like finding a single moment of peace in the middle of chaos. Just his presence calmed something in me. He had always been that way, a steady, quiet kind of support that didn't ask for attention, didn't demand anything from me. Even before we were close, just having him around made things feel easier, more manageable. He paused as he stepped into the room, his arms still holding the cake box I had asked him to bring. His eyes swept over the scene. Guests frozen mid-conversation, balloons swaying from the ceiling, Jason standing there with his smug expression, and me, tear-streaked, trembling, and trying to hold myself together. Then his gaze met mine. He took one look at my face, and his brows pulled together sharply in confusion. His whole body stilled, like he instinctively knew something was wrong. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice steady but serious, the way it always got when he sensed I needed help. Jason puffed up, trying to take control of the situation, like he was still the center of some show. "I'm proposing to Qley, Noah," he said with a smirk, as if he expected applause. "You don't have an issue with that, do you?" Noah didn't react to him. Instead, he looked at me again. Just me. His expression softened instantly. He didn't need me to explain anything. He just asked, quietly, "Do you want this?" I couldn't speak. My throat was tight, the lump impossible to swallow. But I shook my head. That was all I could do. And that was enough. "Then let's go," he said without hesitation. Noah placed the cake box down gently on the nearest table, reached out, and took my hand. He didn't wait for permission. He didn't look back. He just walked toward the door, pulling me along with him. The moment the doors opened and the cool night air hit my face, I felt like I could finally breathe again. The air outside wasn't heavy or thick with judgment. It was clean, quiet, and real. We got into his car, and for a while we didn't speak. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It gave me space to think, to feel, to start to understand what had just happened. I stared out the window, watching the streetlights pass by. My thoughts, a tangled mess of rage, betrayal, and disbelief. Eventually, I found my voice and told him everything. How Sophie had planned the whole thing, how I was tricked into setting up my own proposal, and how everyone I trusted had turned against me. In one awful moment, I expected him to give me advice. I thought maybe he'd try to fix it or tell me how to handle things, but he didn't. He just listened, really listened. That was one of the things I always admired about Noah. He didn't interrupt. He didn't try to make it about him. He just gave me space to be hurt and angry without needing to explain or justify it. Noah had been around for years. We had known each other through mutual friends, group outings, casual conversations. He was always the person who offered to drive, who stayed behind to help clean up, who remembered the little things that most people overlooked. While I had told him about many things over the years, I had never really opened up about Jason. I always kept that part of my life close. It was too raw, too confusing. But after that night, something shifted. In the weeks that followed, Noah and I spent more time together. It wasn't planned. It just happened. Slowly, naturally. Our friendship deepened in quiet ways. He never pushed me to talk more than I wanted to. He never brought up the proposal or Sophie unless I did. He was just there. When I needed to cry, he handed me tissues. When I needed to laugh, he found old videos we used to watch in college. When I needed quiet, he gave it without making it feel empty. Eventually, something new began to grow between us. It started simple. A shared meal from a fast food drive-thru, eaten in his car because neither of us wanted to go inside. That turned into longer conversations, into shared stories, into music playing softly in the background as we sat in comfortable silence. One night, he surprised me by turning the drive-thru dinner into a picnic in an empty parking lot. We sat on the hood of his car, wrapped in a blanket, eating fries and watching the stars. There was no grand declaration, no dramatic moment, just peace. He reminded me what love was supposed to feel like. It wasn't supposed to hurt. It wasn't supposed to be a game or a performance. Love was steady. It showed up. It stayed. And Sophie? I had cut her out of my life after that night. For months, I ignored every message, every call. I didn't read her texts. I didn't listen to her voicemails. I told myself I had moved on. I thought I had buried the hurt somewhere deep, far away from where it could touch me. But then, one chilly afternoon in early spring, everything resurfaced. I had been waiting for Noah at a small cafe we liked, sipping my latte and watching the pale sunlight filter through the windows. The door jingled as someone stepped inside. I looked up without thinking. It was Sophie. She paused in the doorway, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on me. Her smile faltered slightly. She wasn't expecting to see me there. Or maybe she was and hoped things would be different. I froze, my cup halfway to my lips. She walked over slowly, her steps hesitant. When she finally stood in front of me, her voice was too bright, too cheerful. "Qley, I was hoping I'd run into you." I didn't smile. I didn't stand. I just looked at her. "What do you want, Sophie?" I asked, my voice flat, my heart suddenly pounding again. Her expression shifted for a second. I saw it. The flicker of disappointment, maybe even irritation, but she quickly replaced it with the kind of smile that used to fool me. "I just want to talk. Can I sit?" I gave a small nod, but my heart was already closing off. She sat down, folding her hands together on the table. "I've missed you," she said softly. I know you're mad, but I hate how things ended. I just want to explain. I looked at her, my voice colder than I meant it to be. Explain what, Sophie? That you thought it was a good idea to ambush me with the guy who destroyed me? That you cared so little about my feelings you turned my pain into some romantic gesture for Jason? She flinched. I saw it, but she didn't back down. It wasn't like that, she said quickly, already building her excuse. Sophie looked at me with wide eyes, her expression a strange mix of guilt and frustration. She leaned forward slightly, her voice soft but rushed, like she was trying to convince both of us. I was trying to help you, she said. You and Jason. There was so much love there, Qley. I just thought if he could show you he was serious, you'd see it too. I stared at her in disbelief. My hands gripped the edge of the table as my heart pounded in my chest. How could she still believe this? Serious? I asked, the word barely more than a breath. He broke me, and you knew that. Her eyes flashed with urgency. People change, she exclaimed. He told me he regretted it, that he wanted to make things right. Isn't that what everyone wants? To be forgiven? I shook my head slowly, stunned by her refusal to see how wrong all of it had been. There was no regret in Jason's eyes that night, just arrogance. And Sophie had seen it all. I thought you'd be happy, she said suddenly, her tone desperate. You used to love him, Qley. How was I supposed to know you'd react like that? My jaw dropped, my breath catching in my throat. React like that? I repeated. You mean like a normal person who doesn't want to be blindsided by their abusive ex in front of their family and friends? Sophie flinched, but her expression hardened. You're blowing this out of proportion, Qley. Like you always do. I just wanted you to be happy, like me. And that was it. The part that finally made everything fall into place. I stared at her, feeling my voice grow cold and certain. No, you were trying to force me into the life you thought I should want. You've never cared about what I actually feel, Sophie. It's always been about you. She opened her mouth, probably ready with another excuse, but I cut her off. It is, I said. Now please leave. For a moment, Sophie sat frozen as if waiting for me to change my mind, but I didn't. I wasn't going to. Just then, the bell above the cafe door jingled again. I turned and saw Noah step inside, his smile warm and easy as his eyes searched for me. The moment he spotted me, his face lit up. Sophie stood abruptly. That's my cue to leave, she muttered with a sharp edge in her voice. She didn't say goodbye. She just walked past Noah without looking at him. As he approached the table, Noah glanced over his shoulder at her disappearing figure, then looked at me with a raised eyebrow. I assumed that wasn't an apology, was it? I let out a small, bitter laugh, the tension finally starting to ease from my shoulders. No, I said, but that's okay. I don't need her apology anymore. Have you ever had to walk away from a friendship that no longer honored your boundaries or well-being? What finally pushed you to make that decision?